All right, well, thank you for coming, everybody. I am Mallory, and my project was looking at non-white population change in redline districts between 1940 and 2017. First, I'll talk a little bit about what redline districts are. The Federal Housing Administration created redline districts in the middle of the 1930s. What they did was section off major cities into different neighborhoods and rate each neighborhood based on certain criteria. From this, minorities were discouraged from taking out home loans for the better neighborhoods and got pushed into less developed areas. Redlining was practiced for about 3 decades and ended in 1965. The background here shows a section of the Detroit redline map as an example. Like I mentioned before, these maps were created based on a number of criteria. It was broken up into favorable and detrimental influences. Favorable influences included presence of parks and rec centers, transportation, schools, churches, and living conditions related to gas, water, sewer, and electric. Negative or detrimental influences were usually based on the presence of minorities, but also included bad odors, noise, traffic conditions, fire hazards, and the presence of refineries and slaughterhouses. Each of these neighborhoods was evaluated and given a grade. The best neighborhoods, or the hotspots, received an A and were colored green. Neighborhoods that were still good were graded as B and colored blue. Areas that were in a transition period were labeled C and colored yellow. This usually meant that the conditions were expected to decline or the minority population in the area was on the rise. And the worst neighborhoods were rated as D neighborhoods and were characterized as having detrimental influences. These areas typically contain the highest minority population. This leads us to the central question: has redlining caused deeper segregation, and has it led to common socioeconomic trends within the lowest rated districts? If it has, then we can expect to see higher minority population and common trends within the same areas of the D-rated districts. For the study area, I wanted to choose 3 cities that were in different sections of the country. I chose Boston, which is on the East Coast, Detroit in the Midwest and on the Canadian border, and Los Angeles on the West Coast and close to the Mexican border. By choosing cities in different parts of the country, I was making sure that I wasn't choosing areas that would have similar demographics or political trends. This helps look solely at whether or not it was the D-rated neighborhoods by themselves that have helped shape the demographics today. For the data, I used census data from both 1940 and 2017 from the Integrated Public Use Microdata Series through the National Historical Geographic Information Systems website. The 1940 dataset was the closest year to when the redlining districts were drawn, and 2017 was the most recent available data. I also used redline shapefiles from the University of Richmond. They have a program that takes redline maps and digitizes them into shapefiles, which they make available for download on their website. And I also use the segmentation tapestry. Esri offers this through Community Analyst Online, which analyzes social behaviors of residents in different areas and categorizes them into groups, which helps when you're looking for common trends across different cities. When I analyzed these areas, I had 3 different levels of data that I was looking at. First, there was the citywide data. Los Angeles is shown as an example. These are the 2017 census tracts, and these are the 1940 census tracts. These lighter areas are where all of the redline districts were evaluated, and these darkest areas are only the D-rated districts. I found the minority population in all of these areas to compare, as well as the minority population in each of these sections. For my methods, I first calculated the minority population change by census tract from 1940 to 2017. I chose to define minority as non-white, so I took the total population and subtracted the white population. I then loaded the population change values into Geoda and ran a LISA cluster analysis, which is a way to determine whether there are groups of tracts with high minority population change surrounded by similar tracts. Last, I ran the shapefiles that show only the D-rated districts through Community Analyst Online to see if there were any commonalities according to the Tapestry segmentation. First, I'll run through the minority population change and what it showed. What we're looking at, or what we're looking for in this is where the dark red areas, or the tracts with the highest rates of change, overlap with the dotted areas, which represent the D-rated districts. Rather than go through each of these maps separately, here is a chart that summarizes the 3 maps. These first groups of bars show the minority population in 1940 in the D-rated neighborhoods, all red line districts, and throughout the entire city. These are raw numbers and show that the D-rated districts have the highest rate of minority population through all of these levels of data. These show the same statistics, but for 2017. We can see that the D-rated districts still have a higher minority population than all of the red line districts, but it varies by city when you compare it to the citywide population. These last columns show the percent change between 1940 and 2017. When comparing to all of the red line districts, the D-rated districts show a higher rate of change in Boston, roughly the same change in Detroit, and a lower rate in Los Angeles. The trends are completely different when we compare the D-rated districts to the citywide population, with a lower rate of change in Boston, a significantly lower rate in Detroit, and a slightly higher rate in Los Angeles. The key takeaways from this are that the D-rated neighborhoods are consistently higher in minority population when compared to all the red line districts, but it varies when you compare it to the citywide population. And when looking at the minority population change, each city shows different results. Next, I use the percent change data to run LISA cluster analyses. This helps get a better idea of where there are clusters of high minority population growth, which helps identify locations of trends. Similar to the previous maps, we're looking for intersections where areas with high minority population change coincide with D-rated districts, or where the dark red and dotted areas intersect. These charts show the percentage of each LISA categorization that overlaps with the D-rated districts. If we look at the largest pieces in each chart, Boston's D-rated areas intersect with the most low-low categorized districts with 61%, which is only 11 districts. Detroit had the most overlap with high-high districts at 51%, which was 31 total districts. And Los Angeles also had the most overlap with high-high categorized districts with 45% or 32 districts. These results are a little bit different from the population percent change, where Boston showed more minority population growth in D-rated districts when compared to other areas. I loaded the shapefiles for the D-rated districts into Community Analyst Online and read the segmentation tapestry reports. There's a lot of information that comes from these reports, so I'll just talk about some of the main points. Again, if there's a correlation, then we can expect to see similar outcomes in all 3 cities. The diversity index was very high for all of the cities, which is expected with such high rates of non-white population. When it comes to income, the median value was the lowest in Detroit and the highest in Boston. But if we look at the home to income ratio, it is the lowest in Detroit, but the highest in Los Angeles. This can be interpreted as the cost of living, which is very different in all 3 cities. For education, Boston shows the highest rate of population that has earned a college degree. Detroit shows the highest rate for both high school graduates and residents who have attended college. And Los Angeles shows the highest rate of residents who have not yet earned a high school diploma. Since the point is to look for similarities, there's really no apparent common trends between these 3 cities. So to summarize my findings, each city showed very different results from one another. When looking at the minority population, D-rated districts were found to have a higher proportion than all of the red line districts. But if we're looking at the population change between 1940 and 2017, then each city shows unique results. Even the segmentation tapestry showed us that aside from a high diversity index, there are no common trends for income, cost of living, or level of education. Overall, there's no apparent correlation when we look at the trends within the D-rated districts. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will take your questions.